Good afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Call to order the meeting of the Tennessee Tech Board of Trustees. Welcome, everyone. We're glad you're here. Before we get started with our official, well, I guess this is official business, but before we get started with our other business, I want to take the opportunity to welcome formally Mr. Fred Lowry, our newest member. Fred is a mechanical engineering graduate of Tennessee Tech. And Fred has a very complicated title, so I want to try to read it instead of trying to do it from, he's the Senior Vice President of Fisher Scientific, but he's also the President of Life Sciences Solutions and Laboratory Products for Thermo Fisher Scientific. So we are so very glad to have you as part of our board, and you have agreed to serve as a member of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. And do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm super excited to be here. It's a great honor, and I'm looking forward to diving in and doing whatever I can do to be helpful.
Terrific. As I said, Mr. Lowry's an engineer. We didn't have enough engineers on the board, so we were glad to get more engineers. Sally would say we didn't have enough mechanical engineers, so we've got now 2 of those. Right. And now we have 2 football players. Barry and Fred were both football players, and they had a little
offense and defense.
Yeah, offense and defense, and there was a little set to at lunch about that. So
no, we can't.
I'll take some side action on one of you, but I'm not going to tell you which one. Okay, thank you. So then I missed, of course, as I always do, the very first important thing we do, and that is take a roll call vote. Roll call to get attendance. Excuse me.
Hilliard.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Lowry.
Here.
Pardue.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Sigardi. Stites.
Here.
Van Hooser.
Here.
Wilmore.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And we're expecting Mr. Sigardi to be here, but I think he was going to be off the phone until about 1:45, if I remember correctly. All right. So the first thing we get to do today is hear from a group of students. We're going to welcome the representatives of Tech's Geo Club. So if you all will come forward, please. In late September, I understand that the club's Geo Conclave team won first place in the state's 36th annual, that must be it, Geo Conclave event. In 36 years, Tech has won 19 times over teams including Austin Peay, UT Martin, UT Knoxville, and the University of Memphis. So I'm happy to introduce Earth Sciences Associate Professor Jeanette Wolak. Which one of you is Jeanette? There you are. The club's faculty advisor. You look like a student. I'm sorry. And students Alexis Bowen, president of Tech's Geo Club. There's Alexis. Allison Bohannon, member of the Geo Club and president of the campus chapter of the Earth Sciences Honor Society. And I assume you all will introduce your other colleagues.
I will, yes. So we also have Eric Fry. Eric is a senior. You'll notice Eric is very well dressed because he is graduating in 2 weeks.
Well
and
done.
he is currently interviewing for jobs. And then we also have Alex Guerra. And so Alex is a student here at Tech. He's been here for 2 semesters. And he is, I'm sure, one of our up-and-coming leaders in the Geo Club. So we have a bit of show and tell for you. Is that okay? Fantastic. So my name is Jeanette Wallach. I'm the faculty advisor. And I know that the Board of Trustees is probably very familiar with Tech athletics, right? We have a baseball team, we have a basketball team, et cetera. You may not be as aware of Geo Conclave, which is our annual competition that we compete in every year. As you said, we compete against all these other universities. The universities are not divided into divisions, so we compete against other LGIs. We also compete against the University of Tennessee and Vanderbilt. Occasionally we get universities from across the border, so Murray State will sometimes come down and compete. Occasionally Appalachian State as well. So we brought some samples today to show you what it would be like if you were a student competing in Geo Conclave. So Alex is bringing around samples of rocks and fossils and minerals. And what we do is we have a student for each competition. So we have a fossil competition, and that student is required to identify those fossils. The fossil that he's bringing around is Terra trigonia. I had to write it down. It's a PT at the beginning. So Terra trigonia is the state fossil of Tennessee. A Terra trigonia? I'm so glad you asked that because I just saw Dr. Knox, our emeritus faculty back here, who is a paleontologist. So Dr. Knox.
It's a clam.
A clam. So we have 6 different events that students compete in, right? And remember, they're going head-to-head with other students from other universities. And so I'm happy to say that Alex was a first-place winner this year for the Pace and Compass competition. So he made the best Pace and Compass map. We also have Allison. Allison placed first in the geologic mapping competition against the other schools. Nice work. So we do have sports equipment. So the morning events are all academic. Go ahead. And the afternoon events are athletic events. So we have an annual men's and women's rock hammer throw. Please do not demonstrate that. It's a rock hammer throw for distance. So who at which school can throw it the farthest. And then we also have a rock hammer throw for accuracy. So who can, when you throw it that way, it's a bit like playing horseshoes. So we have something that we're trying to hit. In addition to the rock hammer throw, we have a geode roll. And so Johnny is holding the geode over there. And so you would roll that as far as you can. And it's a geode roll for distance, as well as a geode roll for accuracy. I've seen this now for about 7 years, and students have lots of different ways they try to roll the geode. I've seen the single hand bowling. I've seen students try to shot put it, which is pretty exciting. So we have an afternoon session that does these types of events. So our final thing that we'd like to share with you from GeoConclave, and I'd like for this one to ask, we have a number of earth science folks in the audience today, so if you are a faculty, staff, or student in earth sciences, please stand. To win this competition, please remain standing for a moment. To win this competition, it's not something that can be studied for the night before. So this is truly a team effort from our entire department to field a team, to send them consistently from year to year, and to bring home the trophy. So Lexi's going to bring around our latest plaque. We won this year, and as Chairperson Harper said, we've won this for 19 years. I'll point out that we've won more than any other university in the state. We do try to recruit football players to help with the throw. Yeah, so if you know a good football player who's interested in geology, send them our way. Finally, we know that December is a time of gift giving, so Geo Club has brought some gifts for the Board of Trustees today. Eric is bringing around some samples. These are the minerals sphalerite. They are a zinc sulfide. We don't have a mineral of Tennessee Tech, but if we did, I think this would probably be it, because this is what is mined at Gordonsville Mine. So if you drive 30 minutes west on I-40, you are driving over an underground mine that's been in operation, I think, since the 60s or 70s. And this is the zinc ore that is being brought up out of that mine. Dr. Oldham, I'm sorry, we did not bring you one because you have a giant one that you collected in the mine, so.
I had some help with that one.
Okay.
I could not carry that one. That's a little too big.
I believe I have a photograph of me on a dolly, completely suspended in the air, unable to lift that sample. So it's a very nice sample if you have not seen it. The last thing I'll say is for the audience, this is kind of funny. I know it looks like we just gave the Board of Trustees members coal for Christmas. This is not actually coal. It is a black mineral, but it is really and truly a zinc ore. It is worth more than coal. So thank you so much for having us. We're very glad to be here, and we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Dr. Woolike, that's terrific. I hadn't thought of the lump of coal, but some members deserve a lump of coal. Not all of us, but some members. I hear a rumor that there's something about a Mars crater that you had something to do with. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I guess it's been about 3 years ago now. We're doing some mapping for NASA, and when you map for NASA, if you're mapping something that has not been named before, they'll ask you to name it. So we named a crater 3 years ago, and then this year, actually, I'm very glad you brought it up because we named a second crater this year, and Allison, actually, it's her senior thesis, and so she chose the name Chamba Crater for a crater that was named this year.
Wonderful. Congratulations. Anyone else have questions for the Geo Club?
I wish you would not give the chairman her hands on that hatchet there.
It was too heavy for me to throw at you, so
Yeah, I
I would
know
have thrown it at you.
So Barry, is there any chance you could go visit the Mars crater one day?
We already talked about that.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, we did.
Indeed. Thank you so
Well,
much, guys.
thank you. This is very interesting. Congratulations to all of you. We're very proud of you. I have to say, one of the real joys of being on this board is getting to hear from the various student organizations, and that was one I never knew we had, so I'm delighted about that. Our next order of business is I'm going to call to order. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to consider the minutes. Thank you. Is that right? So we're going to consider the minutes of our last meeting. I'll call everyone's attention to those minutes and entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded. Is there any discussion of the minutes of the last meeting? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I think the motion carries and the minutes are approved. Perna, are you on the call yet? Mr. Segurty? If he is, we need a roll call vote. Otherwise, I think we can take a voice vote for the minutes. Okay, very good. We're going to stay with the voice vote for the minutes then. Thank you. All right, now then, we're going to get to the business at hand, which is I'm going to call to order a rulemaking hearing for Tennessee Technological University Rules 0240-09-01 related to student conduct, 0240-09-03 related to parking, traffic, and safety enforcement, and 0240-09-05 related to access to public records. The hearing is being called to order at 1:43 p.m. If you are interested in making comments in any of these hearings, there is a sign-in sheet over by Slayton. Slayton is standing over here. If you will sign in and indicate there which rule you wish to address, that would be great. I'm Trudy Harper. I'm the chairman of the Board of Trustees, and I'll be conducting the hearing. The hearing is being recorded, and Tennessee Tech will use the video recording as our record of this hearing. We've made red-line versions of the rules available to persons in attendance for the purpose of this hearing, and we ask anyone who needs a copy to raise your hand. If you need a copy of the red-lined version of the rule, any of the rules. Okay, I don't see any, Slayton, but I think, Slayton, you have those in case someone needs them, right? Okay, so I will begin the hearing for Rule 0240-09-01 related to student conduct. And I've asked Dr. Catherine Williams, Dean of Students for Tennessee Technological University, to provide a rule summary.
Thank you, Chair Harper. The student conduct rule was previously approved by the Board of Trustees in 2017. It is revised to add language that complies with the Student Due Process Protection Act of 2018 and to change the standard for finding of a violation from clear and convincing evidence to a preponderance of the evidence. Adoption of preponderance as a standard of evidence aligns Tennessee Tech with all other public institutions in the state. In addition, some terms related to prohibited conduct and disciplinary holds on records are clarified, and a provision related to the application of the student conduct rule to students, prospective students' pre-attendance conduct is added. The remaining revisions are technical in nature and correct typographical or grammatical errors.
So Tennessee Tech will afford all interested parties present an opportunity to present facts, views, or arguments relative to Tennessee Tech's rule related to student conduct. Tennessee Tech has not received written comments on the rule. And I'll just make a comment that I so far only have one person who's asked to make comments, but if there are other comments and they become duplicative, or if they get too lengthy, we will limit the time, but I don't think we're going to have a problem since we only have one speaker so far. So I will call Vanessa Curry forward, please, to speak. Ms. Curry, and you are not representing an organization is how you've represented this, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I do a lot of research in this particular area, and my question is, in preparation for today, I did a lot of research. I haven't seen a lot of discussion on, except for that you want to be in line with the rest of the universities, but those who oppose a change suggest that this changes the burden of proof over to more of the defendant or the person accused than it does the person who is making a claim. And in doing so, in the past few years, the number of lawsuits against universities has increased. Before 2011, there was only about 15, and now there were 150. I'm curious if there's any consideration of lowering the standard in that area. And so that was just my comment and interest in, was there any other discussion other than we need to be in line with the rest of the schools in their state? Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, you want to respond?
I do. Preponderance is the most equitable standard for student conduct processes, and it's a best practice in the student conduct profession. The Department of Education has advised institutions that a single standard should be applied to all types of student conduct. After considering best practices and doing my own research, so to speak, I'm recommending preponderance because it allows Tennessee Tech to address all conduct that needs to be addressed and to ensure all parties, all students are treated equitably and fairly. Our entire conduct rule addresses equity and fairness throughout.
I thank Ms. Curry for her comments, and thank you for your response. Mr. Jones?
Yeah, just to get a clear understanding, maybe from Kay, legally, what's the difference between clear and convincing evidence and a preponderance of the evidence?
A preponderance of the evidence is the greater weight of the evidence. Clear and convincing is a higher standard. It is not beyond a reasonable doubt, but it is edging in that direction. So it would be a greater weight of a much greater weight of evidence to prove to impose the disciplinary sanction. I may ask Dr. Williams how she has applied that standard, since she's the one who's got the field experience.
The revision to the standard won't change the outcome of about 95% of my cases. Actually, most of our students come in and they say that they're responsible for the violation, which I think probably speaks to the caliber of our students. This standard doesn't have to be applied to a number of cases, but if it is, it's an equitable standard, and it's a greater weight of credible evidence, emphasis on credible evidence. So I don't think that I'm going to see a lot more cases as a result of this or any type of equity disparity for students.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Rose?
And I guess you kind of just answered this, but just to kind of make sure, have there ever been any cases where you felt like, or situations where you felt like it might have qualified under preponderance but did not meet the clear and convincing?
Very few fall within that area. I would say I've done this for just over 4 years. I could probably recall 2 or 3 instances where that was the case. Very rarely.
Very good.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve Rule 0240-09-01 related to student conduct as presented after due consideration of comments received.
Madam Chair, so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Thank you. I'd like to, let me ask for any other discussion. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll
I
call
want one
vote.
question
Oh,
just
yes.
for Ms. Williams. I mean, I do appreciate the comment of trying to be in line with the other universities. If that were not the case, would you still have this recommendation to make this change?
I believe that I would,
And
yes.
why?
Because it's also recommended as a best practice in my field, and because it's a greater weight of credible evidence. So, like I said, just because 2 people have differing versions of a story, I would need credible evidence to go to one side or the other. So it wouldn't make the difference too much between clear and convincing and preponderance, but preponderance would allow us to catch some conduct that we currently can't address.
Thank you.
Ask for a roll call vote.
Jones,
Aye.
Lowry,
Aye.
Pardue,
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Mr. Shigurdy, are you on the line? Stites,
Aye.
Van Hooser,
Aye.
Wilmore,
Aye.
Harper.
Aye.
Have 8 ayes.
Thank you. The motion carries, and the hearing on Rule 0240-09-01 related to student conduct is concluded.
Madam Chair, before you go too far, I want to thank Ms. Curry for coming in.
Yes,
speaking to us.
absolutely. I hope I did that earlier, but in case I didn't, then I'll do it again. Ms. Curry, thank you, and to all of you that are here about this. These are important rules. Our next hearing is for the Rule 0240-09-03 related to parking, traffic, and safety enforcement. So that hearing will now begin, and I'll ask Dr. Clary Stinson, Vice President for Planning and Finance for Tennessee Technological University, to provide a rule summary.
Thank you. This is a revision of a rule that was approved by this board in 2017. Due to a change in administrative responsibility in the parking, traffic, and safety enforcement rule is amended to change parking citation authority from Tennessee Tech Police Department to Tennessee Tech. The revision also clarifies the appeals process and adds a notice and comment period related to setting rates for fines. The remaining revisions are generally technical in nature and correct typographical or grammatical issues.
So Tennessee Tech will afford all interested parties present an opportunity to present facts, views, or arguments relative to Tennessee Tech's rule related to parking, traffic, and safety enforcement. I don't have anyone who has signed in to speak on this rule. Is there anyone? Okay, thank you. We have not, Tennessee Tech has not received written comments on the rule. So we don't have any comments offered. I would entertain any comments from the board, or I would entertain a motion to approve Rule 0240-09-03 related to parking, traffic, and safety enforcement as presented after due consideration of comments received.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion?
Just to make the observation that parking was brought up and nobody was complaining, doesn't mean that that solved all the university's parking problems.
I thought we had just solved them. Well, we haven't voted yet, but if we vote, doesn't this solve them, Phil? No, okay, never mind, sorry. Joking aside.
Thank you for the attempt, Tom. I appreciate
Yes.
that.
Madam Secretary, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Jones,
Aye.
Lowry,
Aye.
Pardue,
Aye.
Rose,
Aye.
Stites,
Aye.
Van Hooser,
Aye.
Wilmore,
Aye.
Harper,
Aye.
8 ayes.
After approval of the motion, the hearing on Rule 0240-09-03 related to parking, traffic, and safety enforcement is concluded. I think I failed to say that motion carried, so thank you. All right, we're going to take up now the hearing for Rule 0240-09-05 related to access to public records. That hearing will now begin. Karen Likens, Chief Communication Officer for Tennessee Technological University, will provide a rule summary.
Thank you, Chair Harper. In June, after due consideration and discussion of the public comments made and received, the board actually approved a rule related to access to public records. This same rule, with no changes, is before the board again today for public comment and action by the board. The administration is bringing this rule back to the board just to ensure consistency in the rulemaking process for all proposed rules. Consistent with the law, the rule requires proof of Tennessee citizenship to access public records and describes the process for requesting inspection of public records, assessment of cost for copies, and similar administrative provisions. This rule is being promulgated pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 10-7-503G.
Tennessee Tech will afford all interested parties present an opportunity to present facts, views, or arguments relative to Tennessee Tech's rule related to access to public records. I don't have any notice that anyone has signed in. Slayton, no one has signed in. Thank you. Tennessee Tech has not received written comments on this rule. Is there anyone who would like to offer any comments? I'd like to ask for a motion to approve Rule 0240-09-05, access to public records as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you for the second. Is there any discussion among the board about this rule? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Jones,
Aye.
Lowry,
Aye.
Pardue,
Aye.
Rose, Stites,
Aye.
Van Hooser,
Aye.
Wilmore,
Aye.
Harper,
Aye.
8 ayes.
The motion carries, and the rulemaking hearing for Rule 0240-09-05, access to public records, is concluded. Thank you all very much for those rulemaking hearing proceedings, and thanks again to those of you who offered comments. So now we have policies related to these rules to be approved. And Dr. Williams, I think you're up next again. Is she still here? There she is.
TTU Policy 302 is revised to align with the changes made in the student conduct rule and to correct typographical and grammatical issues.
And you all have a copy of that in your diligent board books. I'd entertain a motion to approve policy 302, student conduct, as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Stites, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this policy? Hearing none, I'll take a, can I do a voice vote? We'll take, unless Perna's on. Perna, have you joined? Okay, then I'll say we'll have a voice vote. All in favor of approving policy 302, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. That motion carries and that policy is approved. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Dr. Stinson will now take up policy 415 related to the changes that we made in the parking, traffic, and safety rule.
Policy 415 is revised to align with the changes made in the parking, traffic, and safety rule.
Thank you, and you all have a copy of this policy as well. I'd entertain a motion to approve policy, TTU policy 415, general parking and transportation policy as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Captain Wilmore. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Van Hooser. Is there any discussion on policy 415? Hearing none, we'll take a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. And now we'll take up policy 110, access to public records. Ms. Likens.
TTU Policy 110 is revised to align with the language in the Access to Public Records Rule.
So you all have a copy of policy 110 in your diligent board books. I'd entertain a motion to approve TTU policy 110, access to public records as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Rose. Is there any discussion?
Just one comment.
Yes.
I mean, the rule and this policy, we did debate quite extensively in previous meetings, and I just wanted to state that for the record for those that are just listening in.
That's a great comment, and also for Mr. Lowry, who's relatively new. We did have extensive conversation and public comment on this rule initially. So thank you, Mr. Jones, for that comment. I think that's appropriate. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor of policy 110, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Dr. Oldham, we have a president's report. And I want to know if you've named any craters lately.
No, I have not.
So that's a shame.
I try not to make any. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the board. It's always an honor to have you on campus, and we look forward to each and every board meeting, and we appreciate your time and energies on behalf of Tennessee Tech. This is an exciting time. It continues to be an exciting time at Tennessee Tech, and I'm happy to bring this report to you today. The team, many of which you've heard from earlier today in committee and otherwise, this is a very well-prepared team of folks that we have here at Tech. They've got a great game plan, and we continue to move forward with a great deal of confidence, and hopefully that'll be reflected in my report. Before I get into that, though, this is a special opportunity that we have today. As we look forward to the future of Tennessee Tech, it's important to pay respect and homage to the past and the wonderful individuals, many individuals that helped make Tennessee Tech what it is today. It's my great honor to recognize Dr. S.K. Bilal today. S.K.'s here with us, and I'll ask if you want to come on up here and stand with me, S.K., that'd be great. S.K. will be retiring in the next few days after 55 years on the faculty here at Tennessee Tech. And it's such an honor to be able to recognize and honor S.K. For those many years of service. And I joke with him a little bit. He's one of the few individuals where I have 50-year alums coming back and asking how SK's doing. And so it's a great tribute to him and his legacy here at Tennessee Tech. I'll give you a few things about SK. He was actually recruited by and worked for President Derryberry. He's one of the few individuals still on campus that was interviewed by President Derryberry personally. and had a great relationship with the president at that time. As I said, he started teaching at Tech in January of 1965, and at the age of 25, I believe. So that's a great history. He delivered his last lecture here on campus this week on Tuesday. And I don't know if these numbers are completely accurate, but pretty close probably. He's taught more than 25,000 students while working continuously for the 55 years, and mostly from the same office in Pennebaker Hall. But he actually predates Pennebaker Hall. He was telling me yesterday that he helped the architects design Pennebaker. So he's devoted his life to serving Tech students. I think that's clear and obvious. I certainly want to take this opportunity, and it's a great privilege to me to say thank you to SK for his 55 years and what he has meant to this institution and many, many students over those years. And we'll give him a chance to say something in a second, but I've got and Ms. Harper, if you want to join me here for a photo, got a plaque here for SK that reads, "In deep appreciation for your time, service, and dedication to Tennessee Tech University, S.K. Bilal, 54 years of distinguished service, 1965 to 2019.
Thank you, Mr. President. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to choke up here. It's a long time. It's a long time. And I see here, everybody looks so young. Either that or I'm getting too old. And I think it is time to quit. When I first came here, this building was not even here. The only buildings we had were around the quad. That was it. And I had an office behind Bartow Hall. It was a Second World War, we call them annex. And I'm sure Johnny remembers this because as a kid, he used to ride his tricycle, or was it bicycle, around the quad. And of course, if he does it today, we'll stop him. University police would stop him. But those were the days. Those were the days. And one complaint I had, or I heard, when I first came here was, yeah, but, he has got an accent. And of course, the person who made the statement is not here anymore. And unfortunately, he made the statement in front of Mrs. Derryberry. And those of you who know Mrs. Derryberry, Joan had an extremely strong accent. She is from England. So I had an accent, and the student understood what I said. That was more important than anything else. So the next president after Derryberry was Alice Roden, and Alice Roden instituted Outstanding Faculty Award. And I accidentally got that. So a few years went by, and I got another Outstanding Faculty Award. Few years went by, and I got another Outstanding Faculty Award. Then they decided, well, it is time to stop at 3, because if not, nobody else is going to get this award. And I'm so glad we have that, because there are so many outstanding faculty members here. And people ask me, how come you haven't left? For 2 reasons. One was I did not have a car when I came here. And it's awfully difficult to go anywhere without a car. And a friend of mine helped me to get a car, and I got an old Camaro, one of those rear-engine cars. And somebody kept telling me, if you keep driving this, you're going to kill yourself. So get a bigger car. So I went to the car and motor company, and Walter told me, yeah, that is true, you need a bigger car. So he sold me a Oldsmobile Dynamic, Oldsmobile 98. It was the largest cars they made in those days. And he said, there is no way you're going to get killed in this car. You may kill somebody, but you're not going to get killed. So I took the car for a drive and went to California and back. And thank goodness that Camaro got me going. And we did not have any student housing and all those things like we have today. So the best we had was Second World War annex buildings. These are cardboard buildings, pretty dangerous. My apartment was near Maddox Hall. And how'd you get to work? You walked everywhere. But now I can think of walking to my mailbox because it was almost 100 yards from my house. But in those days, we did walk. We walked a lot, and the campus was fairly small. We had only about 4,000 students or so. And time went on, and I never thought I would stay here. And finally found a woman who is willing to marry me, my wife, Catherine here. She's an alumna of Tennessee Tech. I want you to know that. She majored in home economics. We don't have that anymore. It was one of those things, and she was excellent in fabrics and all those things. So we stayed together, and we have 2 children, and all born in Cookeville, Tennessee. So I became a Tennessean, became active in politics, and some of the governors who came along helped me a little bit here and there to make this a home. And this is a home, and I think I'm retired now, and I'm planning on dying here.
Thank you, SK. Maybe I should have saved that for last. I'm not sure how to follow that now. But I don't think the board needs to be reminded of what makes Tennessee Tech great. And you saw another great example of that with Dr. Bilal. So we appreciate him and so many like him that have devoted their lives and their careers to this institution and our students. So it's great to recognize him today. A few other things that we have going on as we look forward. As has been announced, Vice President Mark Burnett will be retiring officially at the end of this month. I'm fortunate to be able to say that he will be continuing on a part-time basis as the Chief Diversity Officer. So we intend to maintain our momentum that we have currently with the diversity initiative, and Mark has agreed to do that, and we're working out those details, but excited to be able to announce that. Earlier this morning, the Executive Committee approved the appointment of Dr. Rob Owens as the Interim Vice President for Student Affairs, effective January 1st, and we have great confidence in Rob and his ability to maintain the momentum within Student Affairs as we look to fill that position permanently. Lee Ray will be chairing the search for the permanent Vice President in Student Affairs, and that search is beginning at this time. Also, the search for the next Vice President for Research is is beginning to get to an interview stage on campus. Provost Bruce is chairing that search, and it's my understanding that they would anticipate having candidates on campus for interviews early in the first part of this next calendar year, sometime in January. So those leadership positions continue to move forward and get filled appropriately. Give you a quick update on where we are at this point in time with in terms of the budget cycle, the annual budget cycle for the university with the state of Tennessee. The first component in that is the recommendation coming out of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. The commission met recently since our last board meeting, and the highlights of that were that our proposed engineering building is the number one priority coming out of the THEC recommendation to the state, to the governor, and to the General Assembly. So as you will remember, the engineering building received $3.25 million of appropriation this past legislative session to begin the design process. And so a designer has been selected for that project now, and we're beginning that design process. So the request to the state in this legislative session will be the residual of the construction dollars for the project. And we anticipate, since it's the number one priority, we feel very positive that that will be approved and funded in this next spring's legislative session. So that's a great outcome of the THEC recommendation. Also at the THEC meeting, the recommendation for actually an additional $2.3 million of recurring budgeted funds for tech through the annual appropriation process. That's through the funding formula, as it's called at the state. That represents about a 4% increase over this past year's appropriation, and it's driven by our performance outcomes. So Tennessee, you may recall last year Tennessee Tech was the top performing university among the 9 public four-year campuses in the state. This year we were number 2, so we're still at the top of the list, and so that gave us a slightly larger slice of the pie in terms of funding formula. But that's an additional $2.3 million for Tennessee Tech as the recommendation from THEC. Also, there's been a recommendation for an additional $8.1 million in capital maintenance funds. I will caution everybody that this is still early in the process, so this is a recommendation from THEC. The governor, with his State of the State address early this next calendar year, will lay out his budget priorities, and then the General Assembly will take up those recommendations for consideration through the spring term. So, but this is really good news for us, and we continue to be very optimistic as we move forward. Again, this is largely driven because Tennessee Tech is delivering on what the state has indicated that they need and they want us to do. And so I think as long as we continue to do a good job and stay in that lane, the state's going to do their best to support us in that. So appreciate that. We continue the work on the Grand Challenge, Rural Reimagined. The university is becoming more synonymous with rural issues and rural solutions, which is a good thing. That's what we want. We're looking at a number of strategic partnerships at both the regional, state, and national levels, and those discussions are going very well. NSF, SAIC locally that we've helped recruit to the community, various state of Tennessee departments, and particularly local governments in many of the distressed counties that surround us have all expressed great interest in working with us in these regards. Economic development continues to be a focus at the university level because of how it impacts the communities around us and those students that we serve. The classrooms and clubs on campus, they're putting more focus and energy and innovation in particular into establishing the manpower to create those solutions for the future. It's my understanding that currently as of this semester, we have more than 500 students on campus engaged through classes and clubs involving Rural Reimagined, the Grand Challenge. So that continues to grow. There's about 15 freshman courses currently focused on rural projects. And so, and a student club has been organized and created around that theme as well. So it's becoming a daily conversation on campus, and that's what we wanted. And so hopefully we'll be able to share more success with you in the near future. Something that this particular board meeting is focusing on, and I don't want this to get lost in the shuffle of the details and the specifics of what we're doing, but if you boil a lot of this down, a lot of what you've heard today already in committee and what you'll be considering during this board meeting is about demystifying the process of going to college, paying for college, finishing college, and launching a successful career and the development of that career. We want to take the mystery out of the process for students and families. And so part of that you haven't heard yet today is this year we're launching a university-wide Student Success Center that is focused on freshmen and undeclared students. It's student-centered. It will be a comfortable place to be served. We're actually renovating a space in the basement level of the library, so it will be centrally located, but an area where professional advisors will be there on a regular basis to serve students, particularly freshmen, as they transition to university life. And so this is a best practice. It's one that we want to make sure that every student here is well advised, appropriately advised, and that no one is missed in the process. So we're excited about that. Again, that's part of this overall effort to take the mystery out of doing well in college. Strategic planning working groups really led this conversation. This effort came out of the strategic planning process, and which was faculty-driven, faculty-led, and it's a conversation that also goes into online learning, and they brought it to a level that is now under the provost oversight through university committee as well. So we continue to build on the physical infrastructure of the campus. We're putting the finishing touches on spaces on campus that we've dreamed about having for many years. I'll note that a recent EAB, that's Education Advisory Board survey of over 200,000 students nationally, the top reasons for enrolling at a given university, number one is campus environment. 2 is academic reputation, and 3 is cost. Okay. Followed by location and academic offerings. All of them are obviously important, but I think it's interesting to note that campus environment is number one consideration for students on where they choose to go to college. We know we have the most historic quad around. It's a beautiful place, and we've done a great job of renovating almost all of it now. So we made great strides there. All but one of our traditional residence halls has been remodeled, and the last one is under renovation currently. We opened the new addition to the Road and University Center this past spring. The new fitness center will be open in April of 2020. The new lab science building, we will be moving into it next fall of 2020. And as I indicated, we're now in design for a new engineering building that should be completed in 2022, possibly early 2023. So we've made some great strides in transforming the physical infrastructure of the campus, and we continue to do that. We will continue to transform green space and create more green space on campus. And our goal, which we will not be satisfied until we reach, is to have the prettiest campus in the region. We're working now on a project to have distinctive and functional signage around campus. We should be able to see that in the not-too-distant future. These are not only major entry signs to campus, monument-type signs, but also wayfinding signs and building signage that helps visitors know exactly where they are and how to navigate campus correctly. And we will continue to do even more in terms of increasing outdoor and indoor branding opportunities so that everybody on campus, students, faculty, visitors in particular, know exactly where they are and what we're about. We continue to reach beyond our state borders, as you saw earlier today in committee, with the out-of-state tuition proposal, with full knowledge that it will strengthen our service to students here at home by being able to import even more essential educated talent to help drive Tennessee's future economic future. So we've planned for the future. We continue to build for the future. This is the moment that we enter the future and serve students to our fullest potential. And you as a board are central to all of this. And that's really what I don't want you to overlook in this time. You're helping write the history in this historic chapter that changes the course of Tech's story. In your committees this morning, you have considered revised mandatory fee structure. You've considered out-of-state tuition rate changes, and you've been introduced to the continuing discussion on a flat rate tuition model that we think will have significant benefit for student progression and success at reduced cost. These are three items that are not really dependent on each other, but they are coherent. Okay, they come together as a whole. They are bold, and we have a lot of confidence in going forward with them. But I understand that it probably gives us all a little pause about so much change at one time, and do we need to be cautious? And those are absolutely appropriate questions to ask, and I encourage the board to continue to challenge us to be able to address those questions. But I don't want any of us to miss the opportunity that some of these changes will be transformative to the institution in a very positive way and benefit students. That changing those long-standing policies and practices can be helpful, and that you as a board are fulfilling the best practices and the best predictions for what the locally governed institutions and the Focus Act was really all about and what it was intended about 3 years ago when that act was passed by the General Assembly. That as an independent board, you are being agile and responsive to changing situations to meet the needs of students. And we thank you for that. That you are changing our course toward a more diverse campus that will benefit from welcoming students from diverse cultures and locations. And that because of you, more students will find a bold, fearless, and confident future because Tech offered what they needed and wanted in a university, and were able to do it without breaking the bank to make that happen. So, Madam Chairman, that's my report for today. Again, I want to thank this board for all your time and effort and energy on behalf of Tennessee Tech, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are there any comments or questions for Dr. Oldham? Hearing none, well, thank you very much for your time. As you're coming to your seat, I will just repeat what you already stated As a matter of reporting on the executive committee meeting from this morning, the executive committee did approve the president's request to appoint Dr. Robert Owens to the position of interim vice president for student affairs. Is Dr. Owens here? I don't see him now. We congratulated him this morning, so congratulations again to Dr. Owens. And I don't really understand how Mr. Burnett gets to retire. If Dr. Bilal worked 55 years, why can't Mark Burnett work a few more? That's all I've got to say. I think we should take that up with him. Mr. Stites will take the Audit and Business Committee report and recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In the Audit Business Committee this morning, we covered about 5 items. First, and very important, was the performance pay outcomes. We discussed a two-prong approach of 1% pool for performance-based salary and a 1% pool for a one-time performance bonus. Eligibility was discussed for faculty and staff. Information was of distribution by classifications and category was provided. The pool for performance-based increase and a one-time bonus was included in the revised budget. It was made very clear to the board that performance will drive the pay going forward in every area at the university, from the guy that mows the yard all the way to the president. So we want to make certain that all the employees know how their performance will be measured, and we were given 5 or 6 metrics that this board will adopt and try to finalize when it comes to measuring our performance and that of the university. And I think it was really a good discussion on performance outcomes. The second item we talked about was full-time and part-time tuition model. The Audit Business Committee members, along with other board members, engaged in a very robust discussion of a part-time, full-time tuition model that is under review. And this was to take a preliminary look at potentially revising the current tuition model to encourage full-time students to take 15 credit hours each academic semester to ensure they're on track to graduate in 4 years. The staff will continue to work on the model with the aim of presenting this to the board at our March meeting. Third item was a consolidated financial index. The staff presented the committee the consolidated financial index ratios for fiscal year 2019, along with the trends for the past 6 years. Fiscal year 2019 CFI was significantly improved, primarily due to 2 factors underlying the CFI calculation. One was return on net assets, and the second was net operating revenues. Fourth, a report on audit activity. The internal audit presented a report of activities completed from December 18 through November 19. And finally, we approved the 2020 audit plan. The internal audit presented an audit plan for 2020 to the Audit Business Committee for review and approval as required by the Tennessee Tech University Audit Committee Charter. And finally, the Audit Business Committee approved the plan as presented. I don't think there's any action required on this, but we did have 3 items on the consent agenda. The first was TTU Policy 530 on debt management. Second was TTU Policy 531 on Tennessee State School Bond Intercept. And the third was TTU Policy 537, naming buildings, facilities, and organizational units. Upon the committee's recommendation, I move that the board approve consent items TTU Policies 530, Debt Management, 531, Tennessee State School Bond Intercept, and 537, naming buildings, facilities, and organizational units.
Thank you, Mr. Stites. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion on this consent agenda item? Hearing none, we'll take a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Stites.
The second item was the committee reviewed and recommends approval of Tennessee Tech's 2019 and 2020 October revised budget and organizational chart. Upon our committee's recommendation, I move the board approve the 2019 and 2020 October revised budget and organizational chart, including the performance pay outcomes recommended by the audit and business committees.
Thank you, Mr. Stites. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Van Hooser. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we will take a roll call vote because this one involves the budget.
Jones.
Aye.
Lowry. Pardue.
Aye.
Rose. Stites.
Aye.
Van Hooser.
Aye.
Wilmore.
Aye.
Harper.
Aye.
8 ayes.
The next item is approval of the revised mandatory fee structure. This revision to simplify the mandatory fee structure, I'm okay, by establishing a consistent maximum hour limit and packaging all mandatory fees into a program service fee. Upon the committee's recommendation, I move the board approve the revised mandatory fee structure, including maxing all mandatory fees at 6 hours, not to exceed a cumulative maximum at $639 per semester, and package all the mandatory fees into one fee named the program service fee.
Thank you, Mr. Stites. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion on the revised mandatory fee structure? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote.
Jones.
Aye.
Lowry.
Aye.
Pardue.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Segurty. Stites.
Aye.
Van Hooser.
Aye.
Wilmore.
Aye.
Harper.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Motion carries. And the last motion before this one carried as well. I think I forgot to state that. Thank you, Mr. Stites.
Item 3, approval of the out-of-state tuition rate. This vote would be to simplify and lower Tennessee Tech's domestic out-of-state tuition model to become more competitive, gain access to new markets, and aid in recruiting diverse students. Upon the committee's recommendation, I move the board approve the out-of-state tuition rate of $140 per hour for part-time students and a flat rate of $2,100 for domestic undergraduates taking greater than 11 credit hours, and a flat rate of $1,680 for full-time domestic graduate students taking greater than 9 credit hours.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lowry. I will just comment on this one, and I should have on the one before as well. We had extensive conversation about this one this morning in our committee meeting, so there was a lot of vetting on this particular topic. Is there any further discussion on the
I'll
out-of-state
say
tuition
that
model?
when we first started discussing this, I'm not sure that I was for it as it was presented initially, but as we continued our discussion in the panel and everybody involved talked about the background information and all the research they've done into this topic, it swayed me over. So it was a great discussion.
Great, thank you, Captain Wilmore. Yes,
I
Ms.
do
Van
have one
Hooser?
comment. I guess I would like to, my concern is, as I stated a little bit before in the committee meeting, is that it's okay if, I mean, I don't have a problem with lowering the out-of-state, because I do think we're out of line compared to what we see the other universities. But with that has to come some concerted effort and even maybe additional funding to, it doesn't do any good to have the lower rates if we don't have the people that are going to out of state and going to those areas to do that recruiting. And I think it's important that the board sees a plan on how we're going to do that and how we're going to reach out and how we're going to be effective in reaching out to those outside of the state, because I know that it's easier to do that within the state because it's in driving distance and it's not as costly. But when you start traveling and going and reaching those students outside of the state, which is what we need to be able to balance out the budget differences in lowering this tuition rate, we've got to have some additional concerted effort in the area of recruiting.
I think that's an excellent point, and I think Dr. Johnson's here. Well, I know Dr. Johnson's here. I see him, and I bet you accept that challenge, right? And I hope we will see that come to fruition.
Having heard that we have a representative in Middle Tennessee from Mississippi State, I think we ought to put somebody in southern Mississippi and just recruit the heck out of that place.
So I understand there's a need for a clarification on this motion, that at least this one for sure, this needs to be effective for
Fall of 2020.
fall of 2020.
And it does for both of them.
So for the one on the mandatory fee structure as well needs to be for fall of 2020.
Yes.
Okay, so why don't we, can I ask you to amend your motion, Mr. Stites, for the out-of-state tuition rate to be effective for the fall of 2020?
Absolutely. You're the chairman. You can make me do anything.
No, I can't make you. I can only ask you. And I
I'd be
don't.
happy to amend the motion to include the comment that it should be in effect by fall of 2020.
Okay, and who made the second on that vote?
Tom Jones, I think.
Tom.
I agree.
Do you accept?
I
oh,
agree.
Fred.
I accept that amendment.
Okay, so this one then will be amended, and we'll come back and pick up the mandatory fee structure to be effective in fall of 2020. But if we can, is there any further discussion on the out-of-state tuition rate? I appreciate Ms. Van Hooser's comments. I think those are really important. Yes.
I just want to make a comment about it. And I agree with it. I think we need to move forward on it. I mean, that's how I intend to vote. But just to make a comment about it, you really have to ask yourself always, what is the secret sauce? Why do people come to Tennessee Tech University? And it's not always the cost. I do think that we need to lower the out-of-state tuition just to be more competitive with out-of-state students. But even from the charts that we saw earlier, you know, for example, looking at Alabama on the chart, I think they lowered their tuition and trying to make it up in the masses. With our tuition and our out-of-state tuition even lowered, we're not going to be cheaper, you know, than those other schools that are you know, we're competing with their in-state rates, right. Which is tough, but it does make us more competitive. And to be quite honest, I don't really want students that only make a decision on the university just based on cost. You know, I want them to make their decision really sort of based on the parameters that Dr. Oldham mentioned in his report. You know, number one is atmosphere. But I did just kind of want to comment on that. I mean, atmosphere is a conglomeration of a lot of different things. It may be buildings and the campus and activities and beauty, but a lot of it is simply culture. It is attitude. It is the way that student feels when they are on campus. And this is an intangible item that you can't necessarily spend money on. You have to cultivate it through leadership, through the administration, through the faculty, through everyone involved at the university. And that's a tremendous value that we, I think, often underestimate. So I would just sort of challenge Karen and the entire university that, you know, when you're trying to recruit these students, whether it's in-state or out-of-state, it's even harder for out-of-state students because they have to get here and they have to experience that culture. And to me, that's really a better way to bridge the gap to entice those students than just cost, because even from Dr. Oldham's own statements, that's only number 3.
Great point. Terrific points. And just one more that hasn't been raised this afternoon that I want to be sure gets mentioned, and that is that I'm personally hopeful that with this out-of-state tuition rate being lowered, we have an opportunity to recruit more diverse students as well, that we are able to improve our diversity by pulling in some students from outside the state of Tennessee.
That goes back to, you have to create a culture here that attracts those students, and
That's
that
right.
they want to be here, and that they know we want them.
That's a great point. Terrific point. Okay, are there other comments about the out-of-state tuition rate? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote, and I'll remind everyone that this motion was revised to include, to be effective fall of 2020.
Jones?
Aye.
Lowry?
Aye.
Purdue?
Aye.
Rose?
Aye.
Stites?
Aye.
Van Hooser?
Aye.
Wilmore?
Aye.
Harper?
Aye.
8 ayes.
The motion carries. So parliamentarily, can we just form a new motion? And just, we could,
I make a motion that we amend the previous motion on the revised mandatory fee structure to make it effective fall of 2020.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stites, and thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion about this? This is the exact same motion we had before. We're going to replace it with a motion that makes it effective fall of 2020, just to be absolutely clear.
No, we're
And
not
I think
replacing
that's-
it. I just voted to amend it to
Oh, you're
make it
just amending
effective
the
fall of 2020.
original,
Second.
he wants to amend the original vote,
That's
but we
probably no
voted,
vote.
so I think we have to vote again.
Yes,
so,
yes.
okay. All right, so we will take up I'd like to treat it as a whole new vote, because I think parliamentarily that's what we need to do. You can amend a motion, but I don't think you can amend a vote. So I'd like to take up this vote. Is there any discussion on the idea of doing this in the fall of 2020? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote.
Jones?
Aye.
Lowry?
Aye.
Purdue?
Aye.
Rose? Stites?
Aye.
Van Hooser?
Aye.
Wilmore?
Aye.
Harper?
Aye.
8 ayes.
That motion carries. So thank you, Mr. Jones and Mr. Stites. And thank you, Dr. Stinson, for bringing that to our attention. And then, Mr.
Number
Stites, I
4.
think we have a number 4, yep.
The Tuition Transparency Act, TCA 49-7-1604, as of February 1 of each year, the board is required to provide a report to the General Assembly with information regarding expenditures of revenues derived from any tuition and fees increase in the previous full academic year. The report must include how revenues were used, the effect on student financial aid, and the effect on the average total cost of attendance per student. Upon the committee's recommendation, I move the board approve the Tuition Transparency Act report.
And you all have a copy of that. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Jones?
Aye.
Lowry?
Aye.
Purdue?
Aye.
Rose? Stites?
Aye.
Van Hooser?
Aye.
Wilmore?
Aye.
Harper?
Aye.
8 ayes.
That motion carries. Thank you. Do you have anything else, Mr. Stites?
That's it.
Thank you very much. You carried a very dense agenda today, and I thank you for
It was
getting
my
through.
baptism of fire.
It was a good one. Thank you. Ms. Rose, will you give us the Academic and Student Affairs Committee report and recommendations?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and we acted on several things today. And one was to submit a letter of notification for a Bachelor of Science in Fine Art to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. That will not require a vote of this committee, but just so everybody knows what we did. The purpose of this degree is to provide an additional educational opportunity, graduation pathway for students wishing to major in art or music in an accredited program. And the program being proposed is a Bachelor of Science in Fine Arts. This title is intended to reflect a contemporary, wide-ranging, and interdisciplinary arts approach, preparing students for numerous potential directions in visual art, craft, design, music, and related field of study. So we're sending that to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. We also acted on 4 items to policies that are on the consent agenda. Those are Policy 204 on faculty appointments, Policy 225 on new academic programs, Policy 271 for general graduate degree requirements, and Policy 1200 for undergraduate admission requirements. And with that, Madam Chairman, upon the committee's recommendation, I would move the board approve the consent items for the TTU policies, those four that I just named.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stites. Is there any discussion on policies 204, 225, 271, and 1200? Hearing none, take a voice vote. We'll take a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. I am so sorry. I keep hitting that microphone. I have the announcement. Is that all I've got? I have the announcement of the meeting dates for 2020. So I would encourage you all to make a note of these dates. This board will be meeting on March the 12th, June the 23rd, September the 29th, and December the 1st of 2020. Anybody have any questions about any of that? Is there any other business to come before this board? Hearing none, I will call us adjourned.